Welcome back to the Landlord Academy Podcast. If you're new to the channel, I'm Louis Yadderton. I've been in the industry for over 16 years. To my right, we have Kian. He's all about facts and statistics. He is head of putting this whole media side together when it comes to the articles and the editing and the structure. To my left, we usually have Zad, but unfortunately he's in meetings all day, so he won't be with us, but he'll be joining us on the next one. In today's episode, we're going to be talking and discussing about the future of landlords and the Labour government. Now, a lot of questions I keep seeing online is, and we've discussed this, is about one question I always see is, why does the Labour government hate landlords?
Yeah.
So in today's episode, we're going to be looking at that, discussing it, giving our perspectives, and then see if we can come to an agreement, whether it's true, whether it's not.
Yeah.
We've got some information together. I believe you've got some information together. The first part that comes to mind when you think of a landlord and the new government is the Renters' Rights Bill.
Yeah.
What's your perspective? Do you see this comment quite a lot?
Yes. I mean, ever since it was brought up, and even before Labour brought it on, it was the Conservatives who brought it up. But I mean, the Renters' Rights Bill will undoubtedly have a change on the private rental sector. Some may say for the worse, some may say for the better. I'd say it's somewhere in the middle, although depending on where you stand, potentially for the better. Obviously, you have your big ones in there, like the abolition of Section 21, but you also have some very logical, sensical inclusions in there, such as Awab's law, and you have the decent home standards being applied to the private rental sector. I just think generally they're cracking down on just trying to make it more fairer.
Fair.
Yeah, so I think that's quite sensible. But you'd be in your right mind to be apprehensive about it, I think.
Yeah, well, since they released the Renters' Rights Bill, we discussed it previously. A lot of landlords are talking about getting out of the industry altogether, putting their properties on the market for sale because they want no part of it.
Yeah.
If we look at that in full detail, I know we did a video before, but if we look at it in full detail, you've got the no fault evictions, which is the ban on Section 21, fixed term tenancies, no more rent increase. Well, you can do a rent increase once a year, and it has to fit within a certain margin. Let's say if the tenant decides they don't want to have a rent increase, they can take it to the property ombudsman. Arrears, it's now longer period before you can send a Section 8 when it comes to arrears. Discrimination, no more bidding wars, decent home standards, like you said, Awab's law, introducing the database for the landlords as well.
Yeah.
When we broke it down before and we said, it's not actually that bad, why are landlords still trying to get out of the industry and blaming the government for this?
It's a very multi-layered issue, but I think it comes from the general profitability and, let's say, easiness of letting out your property going down. They're making it more legislated, regulated, a lot more steps, obviously means more payments and stuff to make out. Ever since 2017, I believe, when Section 24 was brought into the sector, which was a large hit, which had a massive exodus of landlords. I think ever since then, a lot of landlords have been more, let's say, pessimistic about the future of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at individually, because you're a firm believer that it's fair. You're saying it's a fair thing to do.
Yeah.
And, I agree, but then let's look at it from, let's play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Let's look at the ban of Section 21.
Yeah.
Now, that's the no fault evictions. You get rid of that. I can understand why landlords are saying, well, if we want our property back, we can't just take our property back.
Yeah.
We need to have a fair, a reason as to why we want it back. And then it goes into no discrimination and everything else.
Yeah.
But that aside, in their minds, they're thinking it's going to take a longer process to just get a tenant out. Which, once again, we don't know until it starts coming into play.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's on their mind?
I mean, for
That's one of the
sure,
main ones?
there's bad players on both sides of landlords and tenants. Without doubt, there is a way for more unscrupulous tenants to find a way through the cracks and get around stuff like that. I mean, call me naive, call me ignorant, but I think that after this legislation is passed, assuming that nothing gets changed in any of the remaining stages, one of the biggest sort of fallouts of it will be that it's easily exploitable. On the side of the tenants more so when it comes to notices, evictions and stuff like that, and the powers they have. But it's just going to be the new norm. It's just going to be another hurdle to get over.
Yeah. Same as fixed term tenancies. Now, a tenant will say, well, we want to be on a periodic tenancy. We don't want to be on a 6 months.
Yeah, that's true.
Because, what if we move into the house and we realise that the house isn't for us?
Yeah.
From their side. Landlords are in uproar, going, well, hang on a minute, why can they be on a periodic, yet I have to wait a year before I can serve them any notices?
Yeah.
If I don't like the tenant, let's say, for example, if the landlord says like that. I mean, what part of that is right from the government imposing this?
The ending of minimum...
minimum term periodic.
That's the one that sort of surprised me the most when reading over it, is because the whole idea I thought was strengthening tenants' rights. So I would have assumed that giving them a fixed term would go hand in hand with that.
Yeah.
It's security. Part of me thinks that it's so that tenants can move around more easily, not have to wait until fixed dates to move out and such. However, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's easily exploitable again from both sides. But I think on the whole, this one is more questionable inclusions. But yeah, we'll see. Again, I can't personally see why they would include that, but
No, I'd love to know the reasons. I mean, what part do they think it would work to say, okay, no more fixed term for tenants, yet a landlord has to give? Because I can understand why a landlord would then turn around and say, oh no, absolutely. Why would we want that?
I suppose they just want to facilitate the renting process for tenants, make it easier to get in and get out. Maybe the current system is too long-winded for tenants looking to leave a property. Maybe it's too difficult to leave certain clauses. You have certain landlords that give a year, maybe more, of a minimum contract when they check in the tenants and stuff like that. Yeah,
that is one I'm baffled by that. I'm trying to understand, because you've always got to have a reasoning.
Yeah.
And you've got to understand why they're looking to implement this. I can't think of not one. Either side, that would be, well, yeah, I can understand it from the tenant side. They don't want to be tied down. They want to be free. They can get up and give them notice whenever they want to. But I'm trying to understand it, why they would implement it, and why it would be beneficial for the landlord if they're on a fair case. Yeah. On a fair trial.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Do you have any information on the Renters' Rights Bill?
Mostly going through sort of what would happen as a result of the Renters' Rights Bill, but leading up to an exodus of landlords, because inevitably with every piece of legislation, landlords will sell up. It'd be the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. So a lot of landlords will be selling up, which will obviously put additional strain on local housing providers, social housing and stuff like that.
What we will do is we'll do a video breakdown of each individual part on the Renters' Rights Bill, and then go through it in more detail.
Because it is so multifaceted, so many layers.
There's so much to it. Because that's what I was going to, transition to on that part is, okay, with that, what would the exit look like for landlords? Obviously, we've spoken before about the government are looking to build 1.5 million houses within the 5 years. They've now said that they can't do that.
Yeah.
there is a housing shortage
Yeah.
that we can all know and can all see. So surely it's in the government's best interest to keep landlords being a landlord.
Yes. Let's look at for example, the proportion of private ownership when it comes to renting. So if you look through the years, just some statistics I got from the ONS. If you look at 2000, the proportion of private rental stock households, the amount of people privately renting, was 10%.
Mm-hmm.
You go to 2017, that number was 20%. And then after that, when Section 24 and many other changes came, pandemic, come back to it a few years later in 2021 to 22, it's gone down to 19%. In 2023, 18.8%. So I think that number will dwindle for a bit longer, but it goes to show that that number is indeed going down.
Yeah.
And with the increased demand on social housing, you just simply can't keep up. You can't build enough houses fast enough.
So it went from 10% to 20%,
Yeah.
19, and then 18.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the proportion of people in private renting, and I believe this is nationwide, so it obviously varies from region to region, but on the whole, it's going down.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you have different landlords who will leave the industry for their different reasons, but it will no doubt be felt with the increasing population and things like that by the local housing providers.
So what happens to renters? Where do they go?
Well, you look at any of the waiting lists nationwide, again, going higher and higher with population increasing, not to mention the amount of social homes on the whole. If you look at it on a year-by-year basis, you lose more council homes per year than are gained because of them being sold, converted to private letting or private ownership, or being demolished for whatever reason. Net, if you look at it, the number of social houses is going down per year, in addition to the increasing demand. I think if we have the most recent, I have, according to Crisis, 2022 to 23, 25,749 social homes were sold or destroyed, while only 9,561 new social rented homes were created. So a net loss of around 16,000. If you apply that over the next few years, obviously increasing the amount that's being built, but it's not sustainable.
No.
Which means that landlords do have a future in the sector.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got more people, social houses are going, rental houses are going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just...
It's trying to understand where the logic is, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And you would think that they'll be finding ways to keep landlords, once again, as we said.
Yeah.
So out of this, since they've been in government,
Yeah.
I don't think they've started building yet.
I don't know off the top of my head, but obviously one of the biggest issues that face them is planning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The actual infrastructure, in addition to the actual building itself. So...
And there's not enough workforce.
No.
There's not enough workforce. Okay. And then, let's look at the other part which they've introduced since they've come in, which is the stamp duty surge charge, which went from 3% to 5%, I believe. Yeah, it went up 2%, didn't it?
That's it, 2% increase in surcharge.
So it went from 3 to 5. Once again, that was put on to people buying secondary properties, so second homes. So once again, that is targeting landlords in a way. People looking for a second home, looking to rent out.
Without doubt.
Now, having a look at the statistics on that, or having a look at the information on that, I saw that it didn't really put a lot of landlords off when they were still going through the process. So if they're because it happened overnight, if they're already buying a property, they just continued. They just paid the extra amount. They didn't pull out, because this is what the worry was on everyone's mind is, wow, it's going to get busy because we're going to have a lot of fall throughs and a lot of landlords pulling out. Don't want to pay that extra bit of money. But then from what I've read, I'll find it in a second, landlords actually stayed in and got the sale done, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But once again, to do it overnight,
it took everyone by surprise when watching it.
It took everyone by surprise. But it's something, once again, that you can say, oh well, the landlord, the government hate us. So that's
Yeah.
once again goes back to the comments. Why would they
Yes.
do this to us?
Yeah.
At least give us a bit of warning.
Hmm.
But obviously we saw that. But once again, like I said, from what I've seen, it hasn't really affected. We had quite a few buyers that were going through that process that just went, you know what, just continue.
Yeah.
And they just continued with it.
Yeah.
Once again, it'll be a new norm to anyone else. So I didn't see that affected. Did you see it affecting?
Um, no, not really. I did think it would have a bit more of an impact, and it undoubtedly has for some people. But as long as the numbers stack up, it makes sense because a lot of these investors, they know that getting into something as lucrative as property, the asset will continue appreciating.
Mm.
Something we went through in the last video when you mentioned that housing as a concept is a necessity. You know, there's a supply and demand imbalance, which is impossible to ignore. So the demand is always there, supply is dwindling, so it makes sense to invest in it because you always, when you go to sell it, 9 times out of 10, unless you're buying at a very bad time, be selling at an appreciated price.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah.
That surcharge,
Mm.
where is that gone? Where does that go to?
A very good question. It's just like all the other things mentioned in the budget. They've been going on about a £22 billion black hole left by the Conservatives to fill.
So it's going towards that.
Partially, I'm
Partially
assuming
going
partially
towards
because of that.
Because people want to know where their money's going. Okay, you're saying we've got to pay extra
Yeah.
overnight. Where's it going? At least give me an idea, and we know what we're doing it for. If it's going towards the greater cause, I'm sure a lot of people will say yes.
Yeah, well, maybe this is me being optimistic. Maybe it's misplaced. If you look at the Renters' Rights Bill, you have the database that's coming in. You have the ombudsman coming in. All need funding. So maybe some of that is being put towards other things in the sector, such as that.
So back into the
Back
property
into the
sector
sector.
to make it easier and fairer going
Yeah,
forward.
but I'm no
Yeah.
economist. That's probably not how it works. But that's me being naive and optimistic.
Obviously we spoke about this many times. The CGT maybe 2025. We don't know. We thought it was actually going to be in the last
Yeah,
budget. It didn't happen.
yeah.
I mean, if they increase that, would that be the final straw?
It would have in my opinion, a lot more of a impact than the stamp duty because capital gains is one of the biggest attractions of the
Yeah.
asset. It's almost an inevitability that it will appreciate over time. So yes, I would say that is quite a big one. If you look next year, obviously 25 October-ish time for the budget. If we see CGT come up, that rate get increased, you may see another excess of landlords. But to be honest, with me saying that, it's become very easy to say excess of landlords coming, when I think a lot of landlords are just mainstays. They will just stay in the sector.
And they should, because ultimately, yes, there's changes, and one thing that people don't like is change.
Yeah.
So when you get told, and people don't like being told either what they've got to do. But let's say, for example, you've had the Renters' Rights Bill. We're implementing this. Stamp duty surcharge. We're implementing this. This is happening. Maybe the CGT. They've done other bits and pieces as well. You've probably got some more information. People going, well, hang on, you're just attacking us. No, we're not doing it. We're out of the game. We're out of the game. That's it. They put the house on. I mean, this past year has been the most stagnant market for selling that you can see. So even though landlords have put their properties on the market for sale, if the price isn't attractive enough, they're not selling. And they're coming back down to rentals because it's either that, the property sits empty, they've lost their income, they're not selling for the price that they're looking for. And it's just made they're just sitting there without any income, and they've gone back to rentals and back into, and gone, you know what, we'll put up with all the information. Because to me, yes, there is change, but ultimately, you still got an asset there. You don't want to get rid of that just because of X, Y, Z, until it comes to a point where you are no longer making money out of it. And like you said about the appreciation
Yeah.
of a property, you just keep hold of it.
Yeah.
If that starts happening, you start losing money. You go, you know what? Okay, fine. Let me get out of the game now. But it's one of those. It's one of those parts, like we said in the last video. You can't go wrong with it.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with it. Anything else that they have implemented?
Well, I'd say sort of if you're taking a big, and feel free to jump in and add any more, but I'd say that the biggest sort of concerns and or threats that face landlords at the moment is, as you said, the Renters' Rights Bill, the autumn budget and the implications of that, the EPC level C by 2030, which isn't confirmed yet, but it's looking to be put through its paces, and the rising costs associated with things like interest rates, insurance, profit, etc.
Yeah.
I'd say that they are considerable. They are certainly there and present and looming over the minds of many landlords. But it looks to be going in a more positive direction, I'd say.
Yeah, I spoke to our mortgage broker yesterday, and he said he's speaking to a client of his that's looking to purchase a few properties to rent out. So yeah, they're still going. You know, they haven't frightened them off just yet. Let's go back to the EPC for a second. You just touched on. They are looking to have that as right now it's sitting at a band E for when you rent it out. They're looking to change that to a band C.
Yep.
There are properties we've discussed that can't actually match that. So what they're saying is, okay, well, look, you've got to pay, I think it's £10,000 to then try to get your property to a level C. If you've paid that amount of money, then we can see that you've done your best.
Yeah.
And we can allow it.
Yeah, that's true.
That's it. Yeah.
Because you're right. It's the EPC system as a whole doesn't apply to every single property.
No.
You see a lot of new builds, they pass EPC with flying colours.
Yeah.
Go to a Victorian house or a more older property, for example, or bigger rooms. There's a lot of variables which makes it get much lower scores.
Yeah.
I did read that they're looking to overhaul the current grading system. But as for when that will be introduced, I'm not sure. Possibly before this comes into legislation. But right now, if you're a landlord, I'm sure one of the things you have buzzing around your head is, well, do I make changes now in preparation for it, or wait till it actually becomes law to make changes?
Yeah.
But unless you have a different perspective.
Well, I saw something the other day, and once again, I don't know how true this is, because I was saying, okay, if you spend the £10,000 now before it becomes law, they will not, and say your EPC increased but still wasn't a C or above, they won't take that into account of you've paid £10,000, you're good to go. You're going to have to re-spend the £10,000 again to try and get it up to a level C.
Yeah.
Whereas if you wait until it becomes law, then spend the £10,000, then you'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is.
Yeah.
It's not a risk that I would want to take anyway.
Yeah. This is what I mean by sort of this, I don't want to say disconnect, but something like that, of not knowing what to do, and just sort of waiting around to see the most correct information.
I would say in this scenario, just to be safe, because we don't know, is to wait.
Yeah.
Any landlord, just wait. If your EPC is lower, just wait. If it's a band E and below, I mean, you shouldn't be renting your property out in the first place. But anything above, you just wait it out and see how the law changes and what they require you to do, and then act on it from there. But once again, I'm sure there's going to be a time frame. They're not going to go spend £10,000 right now, or
face of letting ban.
No. I can't see that happening. So there will be something in place to help with that. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Okay, so in all, does the future look bright for landlords?
Yes, I would say in general. I mean, there's always a lot of positives to letting out your property, especially when other people are looking at leaving the sector as a whole, because it reduced supply, increases rental prices, increases tenancy durations, things like that. But also looking more greater, if we look at the argument, is it unfair to say that Labour is anti-landlord?
They're not anti-landlord. They're not anti-landlord. From my perspective, yes, they're implementing different rules, but you've got to look at it from a broader scale as well. Not every landlord is a great landlord that looks after the property, looks after their tenant, and is number one on the scale.
Yeah.
There are landlords out there. I mean, we've seen the programs, rogue landlords, and everything else. We've seen them. We know that they exist. So I would say they're trying to eliminate those type of landlords.
Yes.
Is it unfair, some of the stuff that they have implemented, like you had 24 hours, well, not even that, about the surcharge? I think that's unfair. I think people need to be given more notice before anything changes.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to do it there and then, I can understand why they did, because no one had a choice. But that comes across to them, untrustworthy. Because, if you've been given notice, you can prepare for it, you can act on it, you know what you're going to be getting yourself in for. No one likes to walk into a room dark and blindfolded.
No, of course. Yeah,
so
of course.
People want the door and the lights to be open, and people like to see what they're getting themselves into. So, yeah, do I think it's unfair? Yeah. Are they against landlords? No, I think they're looking after tenants.
Yeah.
And then also, yes, in a way, with a property ombudsman and everything else that they will be bringing in, I think that'll be beneficial for landlords. Instead of right now going through the courts with a Section 21, Section 8 that could take 6 months to a year to even evict a tenant, they might have a property ombudsman that can do it in 2.
Yeah.
You don't know. So to get out the game now and go, no, because I'm not going to get my property back, you never know. It might actually go in the favour of the landlord.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think they're against landlords. I think, like you said, they're trying to make it fair. There are certain things I don't agree with how it's been implemented, but and even in the Renters' Rights Bill, once again, it's not all bad, but we'll be doing a video on that anyway.
Yeah.
But no, I think the future looks bright for landlords.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you when you say that they're cracking down on landlords who I would say are blatantly profiteering off of tenants by letting out substandard properties and things like that. I completely agree with you on that. I think the measures like decent home standards, a Web's law, things like that, they're obviously trying to tackle substandard properties in the PRS. I think in the future, what they're trying to accomplish is like amalgamating, or how would you say, like combining the standards of the social and private rented sector. If you have them all working under the same system, it's easy to have them coexist rather than having this sort of divide between social and private rented housing, especially when you have areas which are heavily rented, like London, for example.
To be on that database as well, and everything is documented.
Yeah,
I think it's needed.
Yes.
Definitely think that's needed to be. You're running a business as a landlord. Any business everything is registered. So why not have a landlord registered who is running a business? Because ultimately, they are running a business.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Or if it's not, it should be. That's how they should be doing it.
Yeah.
They should be looking at it like they're making
Without
profit. So yeah, no, I definitely think there's some good parts, there's some bad parts, but in total, no, they don't. The government do not hate landlords. They're just trying to make it fair and an even playing field.
Yeah. I think that before wrapping up, I want to ask you a question. This potentially might come at the cost of estranging some of our audience, is looking into the ethics of being a landlord. So obviously, yes, it's wise to say that you are letting out a property. I think gone are the days of just letting out your property to some random person with no sort of contract or any sort of thing in place there. They're obviously making it a lot more standardized, regulated, legislated, things like that. But it's with housing, it's this weird divide between an asset and also someone's livelihood. That's why someone says it's a massive ethical issue. What does it take to be a good and successful landlord?
Okay, so in my opinion, a good and successful landlord is someone who treats their property and this whole situation of renting out their property like a business.
Yeah.
Anyone that has emotional attachments to their property that they're renting out, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because they become that they're watching every minor detail, every little thing that the tenants are doing.
Yeah.
They're on the case. They're pointing blame. They're using their emotion to come up with their own conclusions in their head. And the problem with that is you're not letting the tenant live. The tenants are paying for the house. They're paying for it. They're living there. They're living how they want to live. Some tenants aren't as clean as other tenants. You can't have a go at them for it. That's just the way they are. As long as they're not damaging the property. But they live there. They're tenants. When they leave, they put it all right. So I think that there are landlords that do not treat it like a business, using too much emotion, and it's a downfall, and it's downfall for them. Ultimately, you as a landlord, you want to separate yourself from it, and that's why we say get a managing agent because they are the go-between. You don't have to know all of the ins and outs. The agents will come to you and say, "Look, this is the issues we have. This is the decisions, the choices that we've come up with in order to get the property right." Or let's say, for example, there's a leak. Here's all the quotes. How do you want us to proceed? The landlord hasn't got that emotional attachment to it. So he goes, okay, we've got A, B, C, D. I'll choose option C. Let's run with it. It gets done. It gets sorted. That's job done. So I would say that's the main part is to treat it like with no emotion. And then when the tenant leaves as well, when a tenant leaves and they've been there for years, let's say, for example, they've given a notice, they've gone, they've done their best to put it in the right way once they've gone, as they can. They've cleaned it, they've done bits and pieces in there. But it's the landlord's responsibility to go in after, have a look at it, and if works need to be done in order to get it back to a nice standard, and when I say nice standard, I just mean a lick of paint, bit of a freshen up, I would recommend to do so, because a new tenant that goes in will take it as you've given it and look after it for many years to come, just like the previous tenant. The moment that landlords just leave their properties over years and years and years and years and years, different tenants, and then go in, let's say 15, 20 years later and go, well, what happened? Well, you didn't do anything at the end of each tenancy. Of course, the tenants aren't going to spend £1,000 decorating your house. So these are certain things I'd say that landlords need to remember. And to know, okay, all of these new charges that are coming in and everything else, it's a good thing for them. It's not a bad thing, bar one or two parts. But to be an ethical landlord, just stick to the rules and regulations and treat it like a business.
Okay then.
You got anything else to add?
That was more or less it.
So in conclusion, government does not hate landlords. We think that it's a fair game. That's what they're trying to do. Yes, don't agree with everything that they've done when it comes to the overnight surcharges, but ultimately it is what it is, and you've got to keep up with the change. That being said, we'll leave that here. This will be the last one before Christmas now.
This is, yes.
So we want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from the Connect UK group, and we'll see you in the new year.